Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's guest was born and raised in Oregon and currently living in Boise, Idaho with her boyfriend, Anthony. She started competing in 2017 and has done 19 shows total, competing every single year except for in 2022. In 2021, she earned her pro card at her 6th national show, which was the Olympia Amateur, where she was the first runner-up to the overall win, and she has since done 6 pro shows with mostly top 10 finishes and a recent top 5 finish among... Oh, wow.
Well,
watching the video, you guys... There was a photo in the background of her video that just fell. That's a perfect intro. And she took the house down this year. That's what happened. She showed up and showed out. And I was about to say, and those are among the best in the world. Is that not a canvas of the world?
It is.
That's awesome. Well, outside of competing, she works as a full-time sales tech. So I'm excited to talk about so many different subjects with this woman. So welcome to the show, Lauren, aka Lolo Kralovec. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful today. A nice chilly winter Monday morning.
Yeah, I had the heater going this morning, and now the sun you can see it's like hitting my arm, and this arm is getting really hot. So I turned it off, but I always have a heater blanket under my desk because my feet get freezing.
Oh my gosh. I actually have a space heater under my desk, and I was like, I have to turn it off so it's not too loud while we're recording.
See, it's like, I think it's a competitor thing. Like, we're always cold. And you know what? I'm actually really glad that the photo fell in the background because, and I love the photo. I literally have a canvas myself here, but because I forgot to mention on a few of my recent episodes that this is also a video episode. So now you guys get, a little teaser to go check it out on YouTube, celestial_fit. But before we jump into this episode, Lolo and I met back in 2022 at a retreat, and I've been eagerly awaiting this opportunity. So first and foremost, I got to ask if there's anything you do or think about, or maybe a ritual you have before your heel hits the stage.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me. So I actually thought about this a little while ago. So I was thinking about it, and there's not like a specific ritual I do backstage, but literally like how you're saying before my heel hits the stage, I can even picture it right now. I put my hand on that railing because there's always stairs right up to the stage, put my hand right on the railing, and I close my eyes because there's so much energy backstage, and I love talking to everyone while we're standing in line, and I'm watching the screens or like around the curtain, and I feel like that's distracting. So I always make sure I grab onto that railing right at the bottom so I'm not going to fall. And I close my eyes and I'll say something that's like a positive mantra. It's changed over the years. Like with my national shows, it was always like, this could be my chance. I deserve to be a pro. I can do this. And then as a pro, it's always been more, I love doing this. I'm here because I enjoy my time. I'm happy and I want that to show on my face. Let's go.
I love that.
So usually it's just a brief moment of closing my eyes so like I kind of recenter myself and then say something positive about like why I'm there and what I'm about to like my intention as I go onto stage.
That's what I was thinking. Like when you said that, I was like, I love how intentional that is. It's exemplifying how you want to feel and express yourself. It's not just a positive affirmation to elicit an energy that they'll receive. It's also like an accumulation of your journey and your commitments. And that's something I also really admire about you is you always promote positivity through this journey. You talk a lot about having positive expectations, keeping a positive mood, and really the love of discipline as well is something that's been consistent throughout your journey. So how has embodying that type of mantra for yourself and that type of mindset actually supported you as an athlete on and off prep?
So yeah, discipline is definitely a reoccurring theme and things I talk about. Because sometimes I will be hard on myself for like, maybe I'm not the strongest. Maybe I'm not the most strict in following a protocol. Maybe I'm not the most this or the most that or the best at this. Um, but I can always be proud of myself that I follow through in what I say I'm going to do consistently. So for me, like it's a huge reward to real look back and be like, I have never stopped working towards my goal. Maybe that I didn't have as my PRs like I'm seeing posted online or anything, but I always went to the gym. Like I always did my workout. I always finished. And so I think I give myself a sense of achievement with can being consistency and discipline versus like an award for being the best at something. It's an achievement for me to always follow through.
I love this perspective so much because this sport can, no, it not can, it is mentally demanding.
It is.
Uh, and when you're in that mindset of constantly improving, generally, a lot of the times where there should be more space for compassion, criticism takes over. We do get hyper critical, we judge ourselves. And then, like you said, when we're seeing, because we're standing next to these other girls on stage, we're literally competing and being judged against them. Even though, yes, our best physique matters, but we are being judged against them. Then when you're online and you see women posting certain things or doing certain things, it creates a standard or maybe expectation among who you're competing with that you think you're supposed to uphold too. So I really admire that you're saying, I am showing up every day. I'm
Mm.
consistent. I do the best that I can. I'm being better and better. But I also understand that you have to support yourself through those mental challenges, and that drive to be better can be overwhelming. So what do you do or maybe focus on those harder days?
So on like a harder day, like I feel like sometimes my harder days would be maybe more like a body image day and like an off season, um, or maybe a low energy day, where like maybe I made it to the gym, but like that lift's just not going up the way I want it to. I'm not feeling energized from my like workout, or I feel like I'm hungry and I'm thinking about my meal more than my workout. um, I feel like the things I have to do is just kind of embrace like that this is something I enjoy. So if I'm focusing on the suffering part of it or the part I don't like it's giving me then it's like, why are you even doing this? And so it's like I have to remind myself that like I love going to the gym. So even though like maybe this is a harder day, like I love this and I choose this. This is something that like I want to do in my daily life. So if you want to do it, why are you complaining? Because like if it's like that's what I tell myself. I'm like, I feel like if I'm telling myself like, oh, this sucks, then it's like, why do it? And when I look at that way, then I'm like, well, I'm not going to not do it because I do love this and deep down. So I'm going to finish. And then when I do finish, I'm proud of myself. So thinking about each of those proud of little tiny baby proud moments of like finishing last time is like, you know what it felt like last time. You love this. You were proud of yourself last time. So do it again.
Yes, this is a perspective I really appreciate because I often hear amateurs feeling like they have to always be on in order to go pro. They think that if they're not perfect, or they think that if they don't have the best workouts every single time, or if they leave the gym feeling like there could have been more given, or they didn't feel their best, then that makes them a failure. And I've personally been there too. Like I'll walk into the gym and I'm like, oh, I just foam rolled and now my glute is like cramping after my warm up. This sucks. I'm about to train glutes, or, you get like a little bit of a tweak, or maybe you just don't have the energy, like you said,
Yeah.
you just feel off. But I like your focus on finishing, but also remembering your past achievements too.
Because I think when you think about like how good it felt when you followed through and finished the time before, then it's like, okay, I want that again. So I know that like maybe going into this isn't the best, but I'm gonna feel that feeling again when I finish this. And most of the time I feel like we do. Like when you get done with the
Mhm.
gym, you're like, all right. I feel like I got the endorphins going. Like that was good. Or I mean, it just kind of is something where it's like I find it like each person, it's so personal to how like your workout affects you. And you mentioned that like maybe, sometimes people are like, maybe you're not proud of like that you didn't get PRs that time. But it's like, did you feel good? Did you follow through with what you said you were gonna do? Did you do all your sets, all your exercise, all your reps? Did you follow your plan? Then you did it. Like it's not about being the best every workout. It's about consistency over time. Bodybuilding, even building your metabolism and improvement season, building your mindset. Like you're not going to just have that in one workout. There's going to be the whole roller coaster of over time, and it's all going to compound. And if you have more good than bad, then it kind of averages to a increase and heading up towards your goals.
Such a great way of putting it. That roller coaster is what I think allows us to transcend beyond the athlete we started as
Yeah.
into that next version. And like you said, you actually have proof too that you can overcome and that you have overcome. And similarly, like if you're struggling to get back into a routine or you're struggling to follow through on it, sometimes I think we just have expectations that are so unfair of ourselves. And we have to step back and go, how do I rebuild this efficacy or this belief in myself to achieve more or be better and show up again? And so when you're expressing that, you take this very long-term mindset
Yeah.
approach. It's really a testament to your journey too, because you did a lot of shows. You have competed a lot. It took you 6 national shows. And I think if you just had this smooth sailing journey, it probably would have been a very different story mentally. Now, I do want to go back to a previous point you made too about body image. So you
Mhm.
said it's generally in an improvement season when you're feeling that way. And I think all of us go through that at some point, and especially because we're competing in a sport that's physique focused. So, what are some of the judgments you find come up in your head, and are they related to feedback you've gotten or areas you're trying to improve on?
Yeah, that's a really great subject. I feel like people or we as athletes deal with it a lot more because we go to such extremes. We literally push ourselves so far that that becomes like a normal for so long that when we go back to what maybe society deems as normal or as healthy, we almost are like, what happened to me? And then also depends on how you handle your post show, because it can be really difficult or it could be easier for some. For me personally, I actually have a hard time with my body image post show, and I don't always display that online because I think it kind of is an internal struggle. And sometimes I feel like there's a lot of pressure to be a certain way once you've achieved a certain level. Like once I got my pro card, I felt like there was a pressure to always look like a pro. And so I never wanted to share when I felt like I looked less than what I expected a pro to look like online or someone had different experience. But in reality, we all look the way we do in our own progression, our own journey, and with the efforts that we put in. And there isn't a designated look that you have to have at all times because we go through different phases. Um, but I find what has been hardest for me is more not necessarily feedback on my improvements that I need to make, but pressure I put on myself to that I think other people expect me to look. They're like, oh, you've achieved this, or she competes this much. She is a competitor. She should look like she has abs, or should look like she has more definition. She put on too much weight. And so I think it's more, instead of me looking in the mirror and being like, do I like the way I look? It's more like, I'm worried other people are going to think I didn't handle my off season well, or I'm worried other people are going to think I don't look like a pro when I am. And so I think it's more of a, as much as you want to say, oh, I don't care what other people think. We do. Or at least I do.
Yeah.
And so I find that's actually probably the harder part, is the pressure I put on myself for what I ex- think other people will expect of me. Instead of more, am I happy? Like, I am so happy, like, with certain things of this off season. Like, my prep jeans still fit my waist.
That's impressive.
And that's like, whoa, that's really cool. And I like get all excited about it, but then I'll like go to the gym or something and I'll have like, I won't want to wear a sports bra that day. And I'll be like, oh, people are just going to think I didn't do well with my reverse because I just feel fluffy. And then it's like the win when I was by myself, but versus like when other people see me is like, I find that's where I have a harder time.
This is a really great thing that you're sharing, and I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing it too. I really do wish more pros, especially, would discuss their struggles with this because one, you make a great point that you care what other people think. Let's be real, if you don't care what other people think, you probably are struggling with some sort of personality disorder. So
Really?
it's good that you do. Um, and it's even better because it's within a community that matters to you.
Hmm.
And the unfortunate thing is that I think our community places a lot of unrealistic pressure on ourselves. And so it's really nice when we can hear people being real about that struggle or even see it. And it's not that you're struggling in your diet or your training, it's the way your body changes and how sometimes that doesn't align with what we define as the standard for the role or identity we're trying to uphold or represent. And when you have like a slogan of like only the best go pro, that's going to come with some sort of pressure to look a certain way. And I think when we don't allow ourselves or when we limit ourselves to only look a certain way or try to maintain that look for so long, we end up limiting ourselves more long term than if we let ourselves be uncomfortable and pursue that growth.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like it's I feel like there's a little bit of looking past the expectations of others and kind of like trying to reframe your mind on like, okay, like of course I care what they think, but what matters more? Like my happiness? Am I achieving other goals besides maybe a physical appearance? And just I feel like for myself, it's like, how do you get through that is like the number one question I get asked about it when I do share. I'm working on sharing more online about it. I was just talking about with a bunch of girlfriends who also compete about how we want to share more this season.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been working on a way like, how do I do that? Because I think the question people have for me is, well, then how do you push past feeling that way? And for me, it's a lot of reminders, like little reminders, like, are you getting stronger? Are you eating more to fuel your growth? Are your health markers better? Are you having a period? Are you enjoying time with your family? Are you able to have more freedom? Are you feeling balanced? Are you um, having more energy to do things you love to do in the gym? Just different reminders. I use a lot of like quotes and positivity type affirmations. And for me, like sharing them online and like social media is like sometimes it's not for others, it's to remind myself. Like, you really love the way this sounds, or like, this is the positive affirmation for your day. And so I like share it to almost remind myself. And it's not every day that's easy, or like, oh yeah, I just get through that, or I push through it. It's like I'm constantly reminding myself of, okay, well, what else is good in your life? Are there other positive things that you can think about? Because if you let yourself dwell on the parts that are hard, or the struggles, or the discomfort, then you kind of dive deeper into it. It becomes like a spiral, and then it builds, and then it becomes a huge big roadblock. Where if yeah, it's okay to acknowledge those struggles, but then reminders of all the positive things that are in your life, or the positive achievements you're also having, um, there's a little bit of give and take, and then you can maybe feel a little bit more peaceful with it.
I love those questions. Those are you blank, those are really great questions to ask yourself and to fixate on other variables in your life outside of how you look or maybe what the scale says or where measurements are at. Like it's important to have other variables that define or represent success, including that of family, friends, social experiences, and performance, health. All of that is really great because if we only fixate on physique, we're missing a large part of this journey. And I also think it can be dangerous because if we only respect the prep process and only value that, it's going to make our improvement season so much harder because we don't respect that this is also it's the building part of the bodybuilding and we do have to respect it as much as we respect the cutting and the prepping part of it.
Yeah, it might not be the more impressive part, but it might actually be the more important part. I think that gets forgotten a lot.
Ooh, that's a really good way of looking at it. And I loved your point too earlier about the reminders. Like you do need to remind yourself constantly and consistently. And something that's helped me too is remembering that some of those thoughts that I have are not actually indicative of the athlete I want to be or representative of who I'm trying to become. So those thoughts that end up limiting me will actually limit my behavior if I fixate on them. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you've experienced that, but when you have like a limiting belief or a doubt or a judgment, so if you spiral, it can lead to actually changing your behaviors in a negative way.
Absolutely, because when you start spiraling towards it, then of like a negativity towards something that you told yourself you love, and you say you love the whole journey and the whole sport, and then you start building this negative energy towards it, then you might even start avoiding it, and then it becomes to maybe leading to other bad habits or falling off track in other areas as well, because you've kind of built this negativity towards something that's supposed to be a hobby, which is in definition supposed to be something you enjoy.
Wait, you mean this is a hobby, not a career that determines my entire life identity?
Right? uh, and it's like it is something that we is a choice to do, and something that's honestly a privilege to do. Not everybody can afford it. Not everybody can actually have the opportunity to even maybe compete. I mean, a lot of people I feel like have the ability to embrace maybe a fitness journey with nutrition and being in shape, but maybe not the actual full competition journey. And so it is really like a privilege to be able to do it. And when you focus on the negativity of it, then it's like you're taking it for granted.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And you have progressed so much in your own belief of yourself through your journey, starting as I don't think I'll ever go pro to then turning pro and thinking, well, it's just a blessing to be on the pro stage and then going to, well, now I want to qualify for the Olympia. So how has that belief in yourself evolved over the years? And what do you think has supported you in fostering that belief?
This is actually something that's like kind of really important to me. When I started competing, I just was getting in shape at the gym. And I was like, I'm a little bit of an all or nothing type person. Like if I'm gonna like set a goal, I'm like, all right, we have to achieve this, and let's do it all out and make it competitive. And so I was like, you know what, why not do it for fun? Like other people do this, like I can do it. Let's just get on stage. But when I was prepping for like my very first show, I had people approach me in the gym and be like, "Oh, so are you going to go get your pro card?" And I was like,
Mhm, mhm.
"Why are you asking me that? I've never even stepped on stage. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm good at this. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I can continue. I just want to try my best now." And it kind of was, it always felt weird to me that people like jumped from the start to like a goal way out here. And as much as like I like having long-term goals, I think there's something like when you set like the typical like SMART goal, um, the realistic and attainable and measurable, like there has to be what I call progress goals instead of just the dream goal. Like
Hmm.
I if you like, I of course, when I was a beginning amateur in 2017, I was watching the Olympia. My coach was at the Olympia at the time, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it would be a dream to be there. Would I love to do that? Absolutely." But I didn't set it as my goal, like, before I'd even gone to a national show that I'm gonna be an Olympian. It was a dream, and then I set progress goals. So it's like, first my goal is to be on stage. Okay, now I wanna get nationally qualified. Okay, which I did at my first show, but it was that was just a happy surprise. Then it was like my goal is to step on a national stage, and I did, and I got my butt kicked, and I was in last call outs. And then I had to set a goal. Okay, so I was there, I saw what it took, and I was like, yes, I want to do this. So now my goal is to place at a national show. And I hired a new coach, and I worked harder and consistently and never gave up. And I did. I got third at my next national show. And when I got third at that show, I was like, okay, now my goal is to go pro. Like I know I can do this. It's not something that's a dream goal anymore. This is the next step goal. And then once I turned pro, I did a debut right after, and I saw my pictures and I was like, I look just the same as I did when I was an amateur. So now I need time to set a goal as a pro. And maybe I shouldn't set my goal as like Olympia as my first goal, because that's like the big goal. So I was like, all right, my goal is to get top 5 at a pro show. And when I came back to this season, we did that. So I got top 5 at, I got 6th at the first opening season. I was like, I'm so close. Top 5 is going to be my goal. And I did it. And it didn't, I don't want to sound limiting. Like my goal wasn't like, oh, I can't win a pro show and qualify for the Olympia. It was I want to set very achievable goals where I felt like they were a little bit more within reach, and then have a next goal ready to go. So now that I hit the top 5, my goal is, yes, I want to like win a pro show and go to the Olympia. So it's like maybe having steps and progress goals versus just like jumping from, oh, you're going to be competing. Are you going to the Olympia? Like,
Yes.
there has to be in betweens. And it took sometimes achieving each progress goal to build the confidence for the next goal.
Yeah, I think your point about it not being about limiting yourself is really the key here. And I
Yeah.
think people who have all or nothing mentalities, which I believe you identified within yourself early on in this episode, I think those are actually really, really important, because generally what I've found is people who do have all or nothing thinking can get stuck in a loop of failure. So if you miss out on what you set out to achieve, you then in a mental failure loop of, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do it, or maybe it's not for me. And you start telling yourself those stories.
Yeah.
Versus if you do have those step-by-step goals, that dream goal never went away. That's not what I'm hearing from you. It was there,
Yeah.
but it was like, what has to happen in order to get there? And what's super amazing too about that is you achieved every stepping stone, and it sounds like it actually gave you that confidence for the next one.
Definitely. I feel like it really helped build into the next goal. So I really think like having progress goals is super important. So you don't feel as like a lot of failure. Like, because if I had set like from my first show, my goal was to turn pro, I might have felt like more of a failure in that first few seasons and maybe wouldn't have continued. Um, I people always find this surprising. I never won a regional amateur level show. My very first NPC win was when I won my pro card at Olympia Amateur.
Wow.
And that wasn't even winning your pro card because you had to be top 3 in the overall. So my
Wait, are you talking about a first place or are you talking about an overall win?
first place. I never won a first place. I was always second. Um, and so if I if I had like told myself that my goal was just to be a pro or my goal was to win an overall, maybe I wouldn't have had the confidence to go on to those national shows if I was like built up like, oh, I have to win this or I have to be a pro. My goal is always just to keep continuing to be better and set little mini things like from not placing at my first national show to I just want to place. But I want to get my pro card. So it's like I had each like the next goal ready, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, I am actually so glad that you shared that statistic for yourself and for others to hear because that narrative that you have to win an overall before you go pro, I mean, I've interviewed over 300 athletes, and I'm telling you right now, not every athlete of all those 300 have won an overall.
Exactly.
Many have more journeys similar to yours, where their first win was their pro card. And I think that's actually really cool because it shows us that some of those extremes we think we have to hit, or not even extremes, but goals we have to hit to get to the level we want to, aren't always necessary, especially
Yeah.
in a subjective sport like this. It's like you could bring your absolute best to the stage and not place at all. And so, do we want to fixate on the not placing or do we want to celebrate bringing our best?
Yeah. I think there is definitely like a level of like succession into your goal. Like, are you going to be disappointed if you don't achieve your goal, or is it still a goal out in the distance and you celebrate like your achievement going into it? Like if I had, because I wanted to get my pro card once I started placing at national shows, and it's like I got third, and then later that season I got third call outs, and then the next show I got sixth, and then you go all over the place. And maybe if I had quit when I got third call outs at that second national show in 2020, I would have never realized that I could keep going. So it's sometimes there are setbacks, but it doesn't mean failure. It might just be a learning experience or um, something where it's like you kind of have to evaluate, like, okay, is my long goal still what I want? And then continue going for it. It takes persistence. See a lot of stories of like, yay, like I got my pro card in 3 shows, but then you see so many more stories, way more, where it's like it took me 6 to 10, and it was just all about persistence. But that specific goal that you set out, you knew it was achievable, but it just took the right timing, the right dedication, maybe adjustments, maybe looking at those setbacks as learning experiences and truly pivoting from them to still reach your goal.
It's ironic because you hear more about the people who get it fast because that's an anomaly, but when we hear it,
Cool.
yeah, it's super awesome. And when we hear it, we're like, wow, this is a great story. Like it's a lot of press or coverage, as rightfully so. But then also you got to remember the reason it is because most people that's not happening. And
Yeah.
it's just like I had an athlete on who you competed with at Clash, Nadea. So she was one of those anomalies, right? And even she was like, this is an anomaly, And so when you think about it, there's a reason it is highlighted that way. And then I just interviewed a woman yesterday, took her 7 years. So, and the amount of national shows was smaller, but it was a 7-year journey. So it's just interesting. And your point about persistence is one that can apply no matter what, because I don't know that in the sport of competing, it's ever there's ever going to be a time where persistence isn't required. Because even those at the top, I think the target on your back gets bigger when you're at the top.
The target or the pressure to continue achieving more. And sometimes it's like, even like, okay, now I placed top 5. It's like, what's next? And are you going to always keep doing better? And it's like, okay, pressure's there.
Totally. And
But
also, actually, let's talk about that amateur experience you had where you had some ups and downs. You placed
mhm.
really well at the national level, and then you went to third callouts. You said if you would quit, you maybe wouldn't be where you are, or if you had that mentality. Did you contemplate quitting?
If you've ever struggled in your prep or your improvement season or any transition phase in this sport, you know how valuable it is to have that direct guidance and support, but it's so difficult to find, which is exactly why I created the on-demand mindset coaching platform for competitors. That is only $9.99 per month. How it works is you log into the system and you select what season you're in, and then you're prompted to select a struggle you're facing, and then even more specific struggles branching off of that. And at your fingertips, you will be given direct guidance and support with a PDF resource as well as video trainings. And you have tons of access to years of group coaching calls that you're more than welcome to replay and watch, and you get access to a live group coaching call every single month. So you're not only getting support at your fingertips, but you're also getting an incredible community there to support you along your journey. If this is something you're interested in learning more about and exploring, you can sign up at www.celestial.fit/on-demand and get access to this right away. There are no other join fees or cancel fees, so you can come and go as you please, and you are always welcome to be in the Build More Than Just a Body community.
Honestly, no, I didn't think about quitting. I felt like I had significant improvements to make. But it almost made me want to do that more because I knew I was close, and that something so small, like I was off on, like, I just was off that day. Something that little threw me off so much in my placing. So it made me actually have to learn that the little bits of details leading into it matter so much more than I expected. Whereas maybe like becoming a little bit off at like a smaller show might not have dropped me so far because there was less athletes or less level of high competition athletes. And so I might not have even noticed that those small, like being off a little bit pushed me down so far. So coming into that show and having it be a little bit off and then having it be a subjective sport, it threw my placing off so much that it was just eye-opening, like, oh, this matters the little tiniest bit because everybody is so close together in such a high level of competition that it truly mattered. And and then you just bring it with actually more determination the next time because you're like, I know what being a little bit off means. And so I'm going to do absolutely my best.
What was that detail or that little bit off that occurred then?
Um, I'm trying to actually remember. It was Universe 2020. I remember that very specifically because it was just so shocking to me. And it was almost like it almost felt heartbreaking. Like I cried coming up like later backstage. I mean, after I stepped away and it wasn't like in front of people, but just like reflecting on it, I was like, oh my God, that was emotional.
Yeah.
And then I sat with my coach and we talked and it was like, okay, well, maybe we knew it was my conditioning level. So I wasn't as conditioned as I was at the beginning of my show. And it was a really long, or my beginning of my season. And it was a long time between shows. And we discovered that I had a hard time staying at that level of cardio and lower food. And my body just started looking really depleted and softer. Um, and we just pushed as hard as we could for the next one. It was like a weird year because nationals was literally the next weekend.
Yeah.
And we brought me in a little bit tighter and drier, with just a lot of pushing that week. But we knew that was like only for redemption and not for a long-term approach to learn. We had to learn into my next season, to make the actual true improvements. So I did place better because we came in a little bit tighter, but we had to learn that, like, okay, you need an off season now. You need to have maybe a long prep, but not so long between shows.
You realize more so what works for your body when it comes to peaking properly.
Yeah, it was definitely something that we had to like learn and be like, okay, you can't go that long, that low.
Yeah, well, that's actually interesting then, because with your goal of qualifying for the Olympia, right? And this is, so you were talking about SMART goals, and I'm like, okay, well, that's really realistic given every girl you in the top 5 at that class show, every single woman you placed against all went to the Olympia this year. One of them was actually a previous Miss Bikini Olympia, Isa. So that was really impressive. And what a huge accomplishment. And I believe that was that the last show of your season?
I did one more.
You did one more. So yeah, now that you have seen that and you've proven this to yourself, what are you focusing on to get to the Olympia and achieve that goal?
So I'm trying a different approach this year. I did the last 3.5 years with the same coach. So I did switch coaches for this season, um, mostly to learn new experiences. This year, we're really, really going to work on having my food levels be a little bit different. I have typically prepped on extremely low calories for a long time. It's something that we had felt that like I needed to actually get to that level. So this off season, we are really, really working on getting my calories up slowly. And it's taking a lot of patience and dedication. Like I'm still reversing and it's been 13, 14 weeks.
Yeah.
And if you're not consistent with your reverse calories, you can't keep increasing them. So it's like I have to be very, very diligent to get to a certain calorie level while holding a certain level of body composition. And then I think the goal to go into my next prep is going to be less drastic drops initially. We're going to see if we can get my body to be more responsive at like a higher calorie level so that I can have a longer, have more longevity through the season. Instead of looking, so I started to get a little bit run down with a long season being so low calorie for such a long time. And one thing I did change that helped me do a long season this year is my cardio has been adjusted. I respond really well to steps and low intensity, lots and lots of just walking versus like trying to do a stair climber or step mill or something that's really like inflammatory for like my legs and just harder for me to recover. So just I've transitioned to that. And that's also what I've been continuing in my off season, just very low intensity, lots of steps, just a basic movement, help with my digestion, help with like pushing those calories through, but also keep my recovery level as high as possible.
I love that lesson learned too. Like what previously worked to get you where you got, it worked, but you
Mhm.
need something different to get to that next level. And you've learned so much about your body in that process that now you see the benefit of maybe pushing more food, keeping the cardio intensity low. And while that can be really difficult, because when you haven't done that, it's like that reverse is generally longer and more like, how high are we gonna go? But it sounds like it's gonna set you up for success. And the coach you're currently working with, I've noticed that's a trend with his athletes that, at least from who I've seen sign up with him as of late, it's been women with that very similar experience who were on
Mhm.
low food, started training with him, and then you saw them bring to the stage uh I don't know how to describe it, but maybe a more recovered looking package.
Yeah. And I think as an athlete, I'm always looking to learn. Because I don't, we're always progressing. The sport is evolving. The sport is, and we're growing. And I'm learning more every year, not even just about myself, but about the sport in general, about health in general. And so when I chose a new coach, I did a lot of research on that. I was like, all right, so who is working with athletes who have experience, but are maybe looking to take a different approach and level up? Because that's ultimately what I want to do. I want to keep growing. And so I can either remain consistent, maybe have a little bit of change, or I was like, okay, let's go all in, let's do bigger change and see what we can do. So I'm really, really looking forward to what my next season will look like with just a different approach and learning more, like applying what I know now, what he has been doing with his athletes, and just kind of bringing it to a different level.
Definitely. I find it can be hard to leave a coach when things have gone well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was gonna ask if you'd be willing to talk about what that was like emotionally making that decision.
Yeah, it was a really hard decision because I've always been really close friends or became really close friends for my previous coach. I worked for the team. Just I felt very, very connected. We won my pro card together, and always had a really positive experience. And so going into like making goals for my next season was like I knew I wanted to just try to learn something new,
Mhm.
um, and try to be on a level that, like, was a little bit more than what I've been doing. And so it was a very big internal conflict. My boyfriend and I sat many nights just like discussing pros and cons, and he was even like, "I have so much loyalty for you being with your coach right now," and I was like, "Well, me too."
Yeah,
And it just became it wasn't a personal decision for, like, my relationship with my coach. It was a personal decision on what I felt as an athlete was gonna take me to my next goal, and if I wanted to have a long season of I feel like it's gonna take me a bit to climb to my goal. I don't feel like I'm an anomaly who is just gonna new coach, I'm gonna step up there and win. I mean, that would be amazing, but I am prepared to fight for my goal, and to get there, I need some it's the kinda like the saying, like, if you wanna change, your habits have to change. Um,
mm,
I don't know if I'm really wording that one right, but it's like, if you wanna elicit change, the things you do have to change, and
yeah,
so I was like, "Alright, I need to make a change to go to my next goal." Plus, there's always something a little bit exciting about trying new things, and everyone's approach to competing and to prep and to peaking, especially, can be just a little bit different. So I'm excited to add to my knowledge, and share that and just see what we can do.
totally. I really like that perspective as well. I think it's difficult when you've had such a positive experience too.
Harder.
But like, yeah, it's so much harder. And like you said, you got to do, it was an athletic decision, a competitive
Mhm.
decision. So I'm excited to see what you do. And you did bring up your partner as well and how he was influential in this and supporting you through it. And I wanted to talk about him and your guys' relationship because I feel like having a supportive partner is really important. And you guys have achieved a lot together. And it's not just pursuing the competing dreams, but it's also buying a home and you becoming an aunt and you guys traveling together and attending shows outside of your season and working other jobs. So, can you talk to us about the relationship you guys have and how you manage to grow in these different areas of life as well as in competing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel very grateful to have such a supportive partner who kind of lives the lifestyle with me. I think it did help that when we met, we had both just hired coaches with the goal to go pro, and we had separately right before we met.
Wow.
So we had already been working with them. We both had the goals. We both competed for years prior, and we had no clue who each other were. I moved to Idaho that year, and he'd been here a long time. And we met actually in the gym, but started talking on social media. Of course, right?
That sounds right.
And then um, we started talking more, and we realized that we had very similar goals. Um, and our relationship progressed. And as soon as he came to I think he came to Nationals 2020 with me. He was like, "Sure, I'll go with you." And we had just started dating,
To
and
support you or to like be at the
support.
like the whole okay.
Yeah, yeah, just to go with. So we like come stay in the hotel room with me, watch, hang out, see if I needed anything, just to help out and
That's
hang
good.
out with
Throw them
me.
right into it, you know?
Yeah, I was like, all right, we're going. I'll book tickets.
Love that.
And since then, he's never missed a show of mine, and I haven't missed a show of his. We've always been there for each other. We enjoy doing it together, and I feel like honestly, if we couldn't make it to one of each other's shows, we'd really feel like we were missing out.
Yeah, I bet.
Like his wins are just as exciting for me as my wins are for him. Just because we see the background work at home. So we know what each other have been through. So we feel like sometimes those wins mean so much more because we know what it took to get there, and the mental lows and the mental highs at home. Um, we we both so I was in prep in 2020, and he came to some shows with me, and then we did our 21 prep together at the same time, different coaches. And there are challenges to it, and there are obviously people can see the pros. Like you're both going to the gym at the same time. You both had need to pose extra posing practice. I think we spent most Sundays just on our rest days posing. We still go to the gym and pose together in separate corners, listening to headphones, but we're both there doing it. Um, but I mean, it wasn't always easy. I mean, two people prepping, you got some hangry moments, and when both are hangry, you kind of have to like step back and be like, okay, this isn't you. This is us just both having a challenging day. And I think it's kind of one of those things, no matter if your partner is in prep with you or not, we really learned over the length of our relationship that we're on the same team. We both want each other to win, and that it's not 50-50. Someone's going to have a low day, someone's going to have a high day mentally. And when you kind of have to balance each other with that. If your partner is having a really hard prep day, maybe you cook the chicken. Um, or you do the laundry, or you do something that like gives relief to the other person because maybe they're mentally spent that day. So it's kind of being able to support each other with that. And also the map that fell earlier, uh, I got that for us because one of the coolest things about us doing all these competitions together or watching each other is that we've been able to travel. So that's actually pins. We have pins on that map of all the places we've been traveling together.
Love
Uh, so competing is cool, winning is cool, but also it's about life experience together. So after my show, it's not just a post-show meal, it's like a date night to experience things. Like in Charleston after Clash, we took a rickshaw ride around like old downtown Charleston, and
That's cool. I've heard Charleston is just incredibly magic, beautiful city.
yeah, it was amazing. And that's something that's not even about food. It was just like experiencing life. In Nashville, we went and walked down and went to a couple little bars and things that we normally wouldn't do just to experience a new place. And it's a lot about like experiencing things together. And uh 2021 was, I think, like such a cool year to prep together. And it's sometimes like I think one of the hard parts is you don't want to be competitive with your partner either. We both wanted a pro card, and we were both doing North Americans. And he went first and he got it. and I went next and I didn't. And I had been doing more national shows. It was his first national show.
He's one of those.
Yeah. I mean, he had been to be fair, he had been bodybuilding, like building the muscle longer.
Yeah, he was like, he went on with that pro ready body. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so it's like, but keeping the mindset of like his win is also my win. I saw what it took for him to get that shredded, to get that lean, to the dedication of like, even down to the brand of exact cream of rice he ate every single time, the discipline, the dedication. Like I felt proud of his win versus feeling that competition where I could have been really disappointed that I didn't get it as well. But then we just kept going together, because he's like, okay, well, I'll do a pro debut. And so he kept prepping, and I got mine 4 weeks later. And even my celebratory pro card win dinner, he brought his little Tupperware and ate cold chicken and rice at dinner.
Awesome. And of course you would understand that because you live the lifestyle too.
Exactly. So it wasn't disappointing. It was still just as exciting because, I mean, we were together. It was about just being there versus food. I think that's what I hear the most. That's the hardest is maybe like partners with that aren't in prep is like, well, we eat different things. Well, so do we. We've been prepping together for years, and even off season, he's a strict meal plan all off season person. And even though I follow macros in my off season, so I'm making a cool little meal, like, measuring out the sauce and like making it fun. And he's measuring out his chicken and rice. We still eat separately. We just make time to eat together. And it's just kind of we know that we both have goals to reach. And maybe when I'm like this last season in 2023, I prepped all year and he was still in an off season. So he was complaining about being so full and I was complaining about being so hungry. And we're like, okay, different goals.
Yeah.
We support each other. Like I couldn't be upset that he was eating so much and he couldn't be upset that I was shredded and he wasn't.
Yeah, like I love that you said his wins are your wins are his wins. And you guys help each other through that. And you've really grown in your relationship with competing and through competing. And you said at the very beginning, you guys saw that your goals were really, really aligned. And is this true for the outside of competing goals too? Like, did you find that a lot of your values align or maybe what you wanted for your future aligned? Or did those things kind of come with the evolution of your relationship?
I feel like we definitely have a lot of similar values in what we want for our future and our lives. But we've definitely grown a lot together. There were things that we maybe in our previous lives thought like wouldn't have been possible, like buying the home we bought. And I actually think when we bought the house, I used a quote where it was like, separate goals become together goals. And that's kind of how I think a lot of our things have happened is even our goals in bodybuilding were separate goals. They were things that we had already set out for ourselves. It was things we had already wanted. And the more we're together and the more we've worked on it and became more of a team, they became our goals. And so we're just checking off those little things as we go together. And I think having the individual drive means that we can just kind of add to each other's goals. Even in a personal life, like we support each other in whatever decisions we want to make career-wise. I think something that's really important is we have done a really good job at, if we're talking to each other about maybe something we want to do, or even checking in with, like something that like a financial goal or a physical goal, the other person really approaches it with a supportive. Like if it's what you want, it's what I want for you too. Um, and so that helps a lot, for me anyway, because I feel like I can express what I want and then we can find a way to do it together.
I think that is really important because if that actually, I think, is probably what contributes to your wins being his and his being yours, because you're on the same page with what you want. And
Yeah.
I personally found this year, I also bought my first home and I also became an auntie, just like yourself. And I think that those goals outside of competing also give a new, maybe meaning or focus or purpose in life that
Mhm.
is really gratifying. So I'm curious how actually achieving those dreams that you've had and that you just mentioned has contributed to both relationship and life satisfaction.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. Um, okay, ask again.
Yeah. How has achieving your goal of buying a house and maybe even being an aunt or even work goals contributed to life satisfaction and relationship satisfaction?
Um, okay. Well, I think achieving certain things like especially I think buying the house was a huge one. Um, because not only was it a big financial win, like we had to prepare financially for it, but it was also kind of a commitment thing.
Mhm.
Clearly when you're buying something that's of that much value, and you're kind of in it together and um, it took a lot of pre-work, like communication about finances, which can be difficult in a relationship. And then communication on ongoing, like, are you also going to be able to support the other half of this? Are you in this long term? So I feel like that really helped our relationship kind of go to a next level of like commitment. Um, where it wasn't just like, oh, we're both here. It was like, okay, we're both in this. And so I feel like that kind of took our relationship to a next level by achieving something like buying this house. And it wasn't a rush decision. We took a long time, saved up our down payment, had long discussions about it, and it improved our overall communication about things like that. Um, Whereas some people maybe like the order would be like you get married and then buy the house. I really feel like something like this really helped us like have those conversations first, and then move along on like a commitment scale, which felt really, really good.
That's awesome. I'm actually really glad you said that. And if this question's too personal, you don't have to answer. Um, but did you guys discuss like cohabitation? Because I'm currently in this house. I bought it and I'm like, okay, my boyfriend's gonna move here eventually. I'm like, I kind of want a cohabitation agreement. And some people are like, that's a little too much, but I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there for me, I'm like, that would make me feel more comfortable. So I was just curious how you guys approached, like, because you're not married yet, how did you approach that commitment?
So we did live together in a rental first. And so I felt like we took like little steps towards that. So we knew that we lived together well. But approaching like more like the financial side of like being in a homeowners together, um, we felt like we were both at a career level where we could equally contribute. And so we made an agreement of a 50-50 of splitting costs. Like I'm a spreadsheet queen and people kind of laugh at this because I make a lot of spreadsheets, but I
I love that.
actually spreadsheet everything that we purchased for the house, like who bought the lawnmower, who bought the refrigerator, who bought this, and we looked through all of it and we kind of tracked how well we shared the expenses. And we got to kind of a point where we were gonna like be whoever paid more, we'd split the difference. And we got to like kind of like a spot where we're like, oh, we've both paid the same.
Yeah.
So I think tracking it really felt good that we were truly doing a lot of 50-50 and back and forth. We didn't set per se an agreement where it was like, all right, this is written down on paper, but we did have a long discussion on if we felt it was fair to be 50-50. Were we both financially ready to be 50-50? Um, and, maybe if one of us had made significantly more than the other, we would have split it a different way. We just felt like we could equally contribute to the down payment, equally contribute to the mortgage, and equally contribute to the setup, because there's so much more to it than just signing the papers. Um, and so we did have a discussion about it. So I guess you could say it was more like a verbal agreement.
Yeah.
But we didn't we didn't write anything down for
Yeah.
that.
It's in the spreadsheet.
It's in the spreadsheet.
I love that. I'm the same way. Everything that I've bought is in a spreadsheet, and then the receipts are in a Google Drive folder. And I'm like tracking it all, or I use QuickBooks for business. So like
Yeah.
when it's and for personal. So like I'll put in the memo like what it was that was purchased, because I think that it also just gives you peace of mind that all your like to have a spreadsheet too is like God forbid anything happen, you would know exactly what to expect or what everything would be detailed. So I actually really appreciate you answering that question and sharing that, because I think that's honestly, that is part of life and discipline and growth. It's having those hard conversations. It's being able to look at things realistically and honestly and say, this is where we're at. This is what we can or cannot do. And then also like, is this aligned with both of our vision and capability right now? So
Yeah.
I think that's a really, mature thing that you guys did together.
Yeah, and having conversations in advance. I think communication about expectations is really important. Like him knowing that I expected this and him knowing that I expected that about how we were going to buy things and how we were going to furnish the house, and uh, kind of having a predetermined plan was really important. So then when it was all happening, there wasn't any there wasn't any like tension over why didn't we do this or why aren't you doing that. And it's hard. We don't do that perfectly every time. But we attempt to have the conversations in advance to be prepared for situations when it's a big decision. Um, and so that's kind of the way we've been going.
I love that. Yeah, those conversations are so important, and you guys have been able to achieve such great things together. And like you said, you also travel together and compete, and you have a full-time job. So I was wondering, do you have a flexible schedule? Do you work from home? Like, how do you manage your time for all of this?
That's a great question. So I do work full time as a sales rep. I'm an inside sales rep. So everything's done virtually. I am on video calls, phone calls, mostly lots and lots of email. Even my team meetings, we typically do online. Um, Recently, this last year, we did switch to a hybrid schedule. So I do go to the office a couple days a week. Um, but I have the capability to work remote, which I am incredibly grateful for because it does give me a little bit more of a flexible schedule, like for travel. I typically would take a PTO day on Thursdays and fly to my show, and then I would work remote on Friday. Because your coach is like, "Hey, sit with your feet up and don't do anything." And it's like, "Well,
Literally.
I'm just gonna work then."
Yes, totally.
And most of the time I wouldn't schedule like customer calls on those Fridays. I'd be like, "Are you available Monday?" Just to kind of relieve some of the stress and pressure so I didn't feel like I was overloaded on those days or stressed
You're
out.
in your black robe, like on Zoom with the spray tan everywhere. Like,
Non-video day. But I do have flexible time, and I plan things like on my remote days. I love making sure that I do my cardio like while a video webinar is happening. I just prop my laptop up on my treadmill and walk, because then I get my steps in, I get my cardio done, but it's at the same time I'm working. So I'm not having to do like super early or super late. So I think it's a lot of multitasking that I do working remote. And that's been really, really helpful for me. And then Anthony works full time in the office, but he does get away to work remote to travel.
that's awesome.
So he has been able to be approved for those days, which has been really, really great because then we can still go. And he works the whole day Friday as well. So we're literally just like sitting there with like headsets on, just laptops, and it made it really great to be able to do that. And that's something I feel like with the work landscape since 2020 like has changed, where a lot more people get to work remote. And I think taking advantage of that is really great when you're in a sport like this.
Agreed. I feel like so many more people have gotten that flexibility to be like, I've proven I can do my job completely remotely. So no
Yeah.
shame in asking for those remote working days, especially as a competitor. And something else that you've really demonstrated is your ability to do what needs to be done. And so you're not just demonstrating that in your competition life, but also your work life. You're still showing up, you're still getting it done. And that's contributed to your success. And I want to switch gears just a bit to how you made improvements all these years and how you've, because you really have. If you look at your very first photo on NPC News Online, it's like, holy crap, this girl has grown. Like, it is awesome. So, how do you think, or maybe what do you think has contributed to all of that growth? And what do you think are the most important factors when a competitor is trying to make those types of improvements?
Yeah, sometimes I look at those photos and I'm like, I wish those weren't there anymore. But then I'm actually really glad they are, because it almost feels like my growth is more of a success and it wasn't luck. It was, you can see the hard work.
You can
Uh,
see.
I think that's kind of cool. There are like, especially here locally, we have a really great gym that we go to that has a lot of beginner competitors. And some of them will see me posing now and they're like, oh, I could never be there. And I'm like, but you didn't realize where I started. Like,
Mm.
I was just like you. And so I think it's kind of almost more inspiring to see that journey for people who are also maybe have a long ways to go. Um, I think one of the biggest contributors to overtime growth is that I never stopped. Like, I didn't say, oh, this summer I'm just not going to, or oh, this summer I'm just going to not track and I'm going to just lift when I can. I never stopped. Even when I took 2022 off, it was like, this is still an improving season. Um, sure, I've taken like a weekend or a deload week, things like that for recovery, but I never stopped. I've always been an athlete since the day one I said I'm going to compete in a bikini competition. I never never stopped going to the gym.
Mhm.
Um, and I find that I didn't mentally need any like crazy long break or anything from the gym. Because maybe that's why someone would, or if someone got discouraged, they'd be like, oh, well, it's just life that took me this other direction. I knew that bodybuilding always kind of added to my life instead of being something that took away from my life or was a distraction from my life. It always has been something that I think I had to keep it as a mindset that it adds. It's something that's beneficial. I like the way it feels. I like being in shape. People think I'm younger than I am because I look fit.
Yeah. Well, how old are you?
I'm 34.
Yeah, no, I thought you were so much younger. That's so crazy. I swear, and every single time I talk to a competitor, I'm like, wow, we all just looking younger than we actually are. Just the life.
It's a fountain of youth. Just stay fit. But I think, yeah, my biggest contribution to a long-term improvement is just kind of what we even started the episode with, is like my recurring theme of consistency and dedication. I'm not the strongest in the gym. I really don't do big PRs. I'm not the most intense focused. But I am always there. I am very, very consistent, and consistency over time really, really pays off.
And when you took that long improvement season, you mentioned, obviously that didn't change. It wasn't like that's my first longer improvement season. You always had improvement seasons, but that was like a longer one.
Mhm.
So what was different about that improvement season compared to other ones, and how did it influence the success you had this season?
I think there were good things and things that like maybe I wish I would have done differently with that long of an off season. It is the time that I reached the highest food I've ever had consistently on like tracking macros. It is a time period where I spent the most time off stage. And so I felt like I didn't over diet my body. I was able to do things like I stopped birth control and felt very regulated in my cycles and hormones because I gave my body that like long time to recover and feel healthy. But I did reach the highest body weight I'd ever reached. So it took a long time to diet back down. I didn't even do the first shows I wanted to do in 2023 because it just took so much longer. So I felt like it was actually kind of difficult because of the weight I did gain. But I think that just like the longer period of health recovery was really great, even mentally not having to always be on. Um, and I think I did put on a little bit more density and muscle where that was kind of my main goal of taking that season is like I knew when I stepped on like my pro debut stage at Legion a few weeks after Olympia Amateur, I looked the same. And I was like, when I get on stage again, I'm not going to look the same. I don't want to look the way I looked getting my pro card. I want to look my absolute best. And I think that was a big driving factor with taking time to build more. Because I'd always done like just like 6 months, a season, not a whole year, and then into the next prep.
That is such a great story that you had things that were really positive and things that you might do differently if you did that again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I took a year off and I learned like, okay, maybe it is beneficial to not be in full pushing all the food the whole time, pushing the weight the whole time, because I think it's about that like ebb and flow. But then there are those other benefits that come with that push. So it's nice to be able to learn from it. And while you ended up having a great season, it was difficult at the start to get where you needed to be. And you mentioned before your improvement seasons were generally shorter. So even though you garnered more muscle mass and more density, the maybe shorter improvement season led to a bit of a faster response in your next preps as opposed to gaining more.
Yeah, where it's like I feel like there was benefits of doing both ways. Um, that's where it's kind of like this season. It's like, yes, I want to put as much density as I can, keep growing. But my focus more is kind of stay at a better body composition while increasing my food and really having that be a bigger focus for me. And I think that'll help where I won't have to diet as hard as you get to a certain body weight, to get back down to stage lean, it takes a lot more dieting. And is there a little bit of not as much payoff of like you put on like those few ounces of muscle, but you had to diet harder? Are you going to lose those? Like
Exactly.
there's a balance of that. Like there's could be a little bit of risk of like too much either direction. So I don't know if I would do such a long improvement season that structure. I think kind of like what you said is I might do it a little differently if I did a longer one, where it's kind of maybe some mini cuts, things to keep my body composition constantly improving. I think it just a little bit different focus, but I'm always glad to, have the time to put on the muscle.
Yeah, it's such a nice phase to be in for so many different reasons. And I think like I've come to this point where I'm like, I know I need to stay in my improvement season if thinking about prep just doesn't sound uh too exciting yet. And or if I know there's still more work to be done, which there always is, but there's a point where you get to where, okay, I could do a prep and probably bring something really great. And like you focusing on the body composition, I know this improvement season, I got up to a weight that was like somewhat reminiscent of a version of me where I was like, I don't want to keep pushing a weight. I don't want to go through another weight loss prep. Ended up being that I was having a lot of SIBO and gut health issues.
Oh,
Treated that.
yeah.
We treated it. It was almost like a mini cut. Treated it. I dropped 10 pounds and now I've been maintaining and eating more food than ever. So I think those intense growth, proper reverse diet, intense growth focus, pushing as much as you can, but then also being mindful enough to know, like, if you're not feeling your best or if where you're headed isn't necessarily going to be conducive to where you want to go. It's not being fearful of gaining weight. It's being mindful of how you do it
Yeah.
and how you feel.
Yeah, like, and for me, like, sometimes I don't feel like I wanna eat more because I don't wanna gain the weight, but then I think back and I'm like, "This food is going to help me prep better, it's going to help me grow more." And so thinking about it not as, like, food's gonna make me gain weight, but food's gonna make me grow muscle, food's gonna make it
Yeah.
so my metabolism responds better in my next prep. And just kind of having a different look at it, and things like maybe a long improvement season, you do adjust things for like it gives you the time for correcting health issues like gut health. For me, it was coming off birth control and just being more regulated. After I think it was like 10, 11 years.
Wow. Do you have a regular
Um,
period right now, even after all of that?
um, it's a little bit irregular by like a few days, but it's back.
That's
Very
awesome.
normal. Which I think is a good place right now as an athlete,
Great.
or I'm tracking it, and I was like, "It was 3 days different this cycle," so but that's normal.
I know, right? I'll like look at mine. I'm like, okay, 27-day cycle. Then it's like a 32-day cycle. I'm like, okay, that's within range. It's not too long. It's not too short.
It's happening, I'm tracking it, and I think, just over time, it's been more and more consistent, but, yeah, it's been great to kind of I did my whole prep, with no birth control and everything, and I felt like everything was a lot easier on my body for that, and I'm glad I experienced that in my last improvement season because it gave me time. I was like, "What if I have a big fluctuation?" I didn't have any stress of like, "Well, I'm in prep." It gave me the time to let my body regulate while I was like not worried about fluctuations.
That's such a great point. And was there a reason you came off birth control? Was it so you could be regulated or?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, especially more and more recently, maybe it's just I'm doing more research, are a little bit more cognizant of like where our hormone levels are, getting labs done, looking at that. I feel I'm glad it is, but it's a lot more common to do now than it used to be. And bodybuilding's already hard on our bodies, and can cause some extreme dieting can cause hormone changes. Not for the best sometimes. And so I think I wanted to be able to get my labs done on a without synthetic hormones. I wanted it to be my body and actually really check into where I was naturally, and be like, am I healthy naturally?
I
And
think that's really cool.
that was a really big deal to me, and, I was pleasantly surprised that everything went fairly smooth, but I think it gave me a lot less anxiety that I didn't have any pressure of, like, that I was starting prep or, like, that I was, like, trying to cut or, anything like that. It gave me the time to be like, "Okay, I can wait months," because it's a month between each cycle. Like, you have to wait months to know if it's regular, and
Wait,
it just, like I felt like it gave me time to happen in the background. And improvement seasons are a really good chance to work on things like I have been having issues with my shoulder. And I didn't want any inflammation when I was in prep. So I was just like, don't touch it. And
mm,
then now I'm like, okay, improvement season. I'm seeing a physical therapist. I'm getting body work done. I'm getting massages. I'm doing PT exercises. I'm making sure everything's in place right now. And even you can see the bruising and
yeah. Oh,
it's worth it, to do that now because I don't if, like, I have a reaction to some inflammation from it, like, that's okay. That's good. I'm being able to work on things right now that make me healthier long term and are just gonna improve my prep next time. So
so true.
I think
Improvement
planning
seasons are
things like
great for that.
surgeries, injury recovery, I mean, you can't always plan when your injury is, but free from prep. I think it's a great time to do it in an improvement season is just you get the chance to let it ride out. Like gut health might take you a little time or it might take someone 6 months to have a corrective protocol. So it gives you so much time to regulate and work on those things while you're achieving your other goals and while you're working out.
That's been my biggest lesson recently, or maybe even just through improvement seasons as an athlete, is it's not just improving for the stage. There's so many things that are being worked on, like you said, behind the scenes to help the stage look, yes, but also support that longevity. You also mentioned surgery. So I want to ask you about your breast augmentation. So you did that in one of your improvement seasons. And
I did.
I think you've probably got this question so many times, but I'm going to ask it on the podcast, which is, how has getting that, if at all, impacted you as a competitor?
So I got mine done, my breast augmentation done in January 2021. So it was right before I started prep for the season I got my pro card. Um, I think I think the hardest part was that I actually felt fairly good after my surgery, after the procedure was done. And so I wanted to just jump straight back into working out. And it was very, very hard for me to take it slow. Because I knew I was going to be starting prep soon. And I was like, I just want to do everything I can before we're starting prep. And so I think slowing down was difficult, but a good experience, something I needed to do. Um, and I did go under the muscle. So I felt like at first I was like, okay, recovery actually went really smooth. So I'm glad that was like that. But I did feel like I noticed I was very tentative to push too hard in certain things, like anything that was pressing, anything that was like really, really strong and pulling. I used to do pull-up challenges all the time, and then I went to like a year without doing any. It made it very difficult for me to continue doing that. I felt like I lost a little bit of pop in the front delts for a whole year because I was just so tentative to push there. So I wish I could have told myself like that there was a balance. Yes, you needed to give yourself that recovery time, but then there was a time where you could have gone back to it. Um, I don't regret doing it. I love having them. I think even if I didn't compete, I would still do the same thing. It gave me a little bit of confidence, I would say. I enjoy the shape. I don't feel like I've ever had a very curvy shape. So muscles, having a breast augmentation, I feel very more, I guess you could say, feminine. Especially when I started getting so lean after certain competitions and you could just see like pec lines.
Mhm.
And so I felt like it was a great addition to just not even like my overall stage look. Because there's things you can do without a breast augmentation, like padding a suit correctly, having a little bit more growth in your upper body, posing a little bit differently. So it's not something that's like required or necessary. But for me, I felt like it did give me a little bit confidence even outside of my competing life. Um, I felt a little bit more feminine. I felt a little bit curvier. It just made me feel good. And sometimes when you feel good, you do more or do better with certain things. So there was like some pros and cons where I felt like I stepped back a little bit and now I'm paying for it with having to work harder on my shoulders again.
Yeah.
But in the overall, I wouldn't change doing it. I'm glad I did.
I appreciate you sharing the pros and cons because it sounds like you're really happy about it. And then
Mhm.
there's the other side where if someone else is considering it, maybe to know that there's some cons that could come with it or some adjustments that would have to be made. And you also brought up the posing. Did you have to change your posing or did you modify your posing after the breast augmentation because now you had more balance?
Um, I think every season it's always adjusted just a little bit, just kind of with how my composition has changed so much over the years. So I'd say it kind of just more my posing just kept evolving and evolved with it, just as if like you put on significant muscle between seasons, your posing's always going to evolve, or maybe you decide you have more flexibility on a different side the next season. It was kind of just went more along with my posing evolution versus like a significant change. I wouldn't say it was something because I didn't go like so large that I felt like it was like whoa, she looks crazy different. I felt like it looked natural and proportional. And that was something I really went for too, is I didn't want anything that was obnoxious. I wanted to be I just wanted to be proportional. I think even in bikini, we see that a little bit more because we're like, all right, and bottom, we want it to be even, we want proportions. And so I think it helped me visualize that being
Yeah.
proportional too.
That's actually a really good point because I know sometimes the concern competitors have when they decide that they're going to get a breast augmentation is how it will look when they're super lean again too.
Mhm.
So they're trying to size not just for their improvement season body, but also their prep body. So how did you know what would even be, or maybe how did you consult with the surgeon on what that would look like?
So I actually, when I went and did my consultation, it was post show, like just a couple weeks. So I was really fairly lean when I went in. Um, and so the surgeon could actually really see kind of like my pec muscles.
Yeah.
And like the width of my shoulders and things. Like we even went with a more of a medium profile that had a wider base just because of the width of my chest. Instead of something, maybe a higher profile might have been narrower and I might have had more of a gap in the center. Like we talked a lot about kind of how it would look while I was that lean. So I did go do my consultation while I was lean and then scheduled it after I had reversed a while so I knew I would recover better.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that helped my surgeons see kind of what I was trying to achieve. Um, Sometimes I wish he would have done a little bit more size exploration with me. I felt a little rushed in that decision, but ultimately I'm glad I trusted him because again, I feel like I have a very natural proportional look versus kind of anything extravagant. Like I think sometimes people wouldn't even know that I did, except for when I'm really lean, you can see like a little more of the line around the pocket and the implant itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I think everyone I've ever spoken to who has had a BA always wishes that they had gone a little bit bigger.
A little, but not much.
So, and I always feel like that's a testament to the surgeon because they probably know that and they're like, okay, I think they'll come back for a revision in 10 years and go a bit bigger.
It's a business
Or,
model.
yeah, just like, this will be fine for now. And I think that's
It's a
probably
subscription, you just keep going.
yeah. Exactly, and I love how you can have an appreciation for that, and also your approach, like, thank you for sharing how you approach that because I know there's people who are considering it who
Mhm.
maybe are contemplating, "Do I go in the depths of improvement season when I'm carrying more body fat, or do I go closer to a prep?" And I have found most competitors have gone closer to being post-show because they care about how it's gonna look on stage.
Yeah, I think at least having your consultation post-show is really great because your surgeon can see how your body really looks lean, and can kind of they might not always work some surgeons, you go because they specifically work on athletes, but not all of them see people in, like, competition lean stage, but I am glad that I waited to do it and scheduled it a little bit further out because I felt like it made recovery easier. But one thing I will say, like when people are thinking about it and haven't had it before, it is a surgery. Um, and you are putting your body through something that's invasive and you're going completely under anesthesia, and that's not something to take lightly. It's a big decision, and it's a permanent. I mean, I know you can get explant surgeries, but it's a permanent revision to your body. Even if you get the explant surgery later, like your body has so much recovery from that still. You still placed an implant in your body. And so it's not something to take lightly or be like, oh, I just want it because other people are, because I see a lot of most pros have it. There are top pros that don't have it, and it's not something that's required. But I mean, I'm personally glad I did it. And if someone wants it, like I'm all supportive of it. But I think before just jumping on board, like taking time to consider, like, do I want surgery? Do I want to go through recovery time? There are, I feel like I've had, even though I felt like I had a very smooth recovery, being an athlete, I feel like there are things like going under the muscle. Like I still have it's tightness and some scar tissue under my serratus right here where maybe I don't know if it's from the surgery and it makes some lifts difficult, like some lat pull downs and pull ups and things are still just, they don't hurt, but they're uncomfortable. And I have to work around it or push through it because I elected to have the surgery.
I like the way you worded that. I think that's the reason. Well, that's one of the reasons why I personally wouldn't, because I know it would drive me. One, I like having itty bitty titties. I like not. I like when I get annoyed when they're swollen before my period and like they feel like
Right?
my way. But then again, I'm also like when I'm wearing a push-up bra, I'm like, who's that? Um, I'm like, I'll just keep doing that. But I think for me, the biggest thing would be the impact on training that
Yeah.
I would have a hard time with. So I love that you shared that because that can be overlooked more often than it should be, along with the risk of, yeah, it's not like you're just being numbed and you're getting a toenail frozen off, you're
Yeah.
literally in a surgery and having something foreign put into your body.
Yeah, so I think it is something that's a huge consideration to take in the fact that you're really going under surgery. Like it's a full surgery. It's not just a quick procedure. It's not getting a Botox prick either. It's like a big thing. And like, so I'm very supportive if people want it or don't want it. Like it's truly such a personal decision on what you want to do with your body. And um, if it's something that you truly want, like go for it as long as you've thought it through. And if it's something where like you think it through and you're like, no, I don't want to put my body through that, then I don't think there should be any issue with that.
Yeah, and I like how you said it can be you can compete even without them. We see
Oh
that,
yeah. Yeah.
and it can help. I've heard a lot of people talk about how it helps their overall balance, but also people who don't have it are successful too. So I think
Mhm.
your point earlier too about it has to be a personal decision that benefits you beyond the stage as well is key.
Yeah, and honestly, is body modification, because that's truly what it is that something that's worth it to you for a win or a trophy at some point? Or is it like, because like it's not like winning is amazing and it's great and it's an amazing goal and it's what most of us competitors and athletes want and do. But I mean, is it at the sake of potentially certain health or certain side effects or certain issues? Like, or if you love certain aspects of training that it might impact? Like, those are just questions I think to ask yourself. Like, I find that I'm happy with everything and I wouldn't change it, but I do when girls ask me if they should or what my feedback is, it's like truly think it through.
I'm actually really glad you're not just glamorizing it because you've made that decision. You'll
And
hear
I'm
some
happy with it.
decision. That doesn't mean you're gonna encourage people to not you're not gonna encourage people to take it lightly just because you're happy with it. And so
Yeah.
that's something I value is your honesty. You're still looking at it from a very realistic point of view. You're like, these are the important things to consider. My guess is you're probably extra happy because you considered those points.
Yeah. I think with any decision, it's kind of like you have to kind of go through almost like some research, not just research, but like what is the any decision you make, is it worth it for any sacrifice that you have to make the choice?
Mm, yeah, that's a really good point because there is going to be sacrifices that come with it no matter what. And I think that's true of anything. And man, I feel like there's so many more things we could talk about. I also want to encourage people. I know we're gonna share where they can connect with you online, but one of the things that I think is really cool is you've talked about like how you set up your posing and check-in lighting. You've shared
Oh yeah.
macro recipes. Like your Instagram is really valuable. So at the end, we'll let people know how they can connect with you there. But I personally want to ask you, is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you think I should have?
I feel like you're right, we could just keep talking and talking about so many different things. Um, but no, I think we've covered a lot of like the main topics we discussed talking about. And I think this actually even inspires me, like even just talking about it with like, I really find value in like sharing this with people that it could inspire. And like maybe holding back some things because like I'm worried, like, I mean, why not share it? Like, if it could help someone else or just help one other person, why not? And even just accountability of like, when I share something, having it be a personal reminder for myself as well.
I'm glad to hear that. That's so awesome. I want this podcast to give athletes a platform to be fully themselves and also show others that there's more to this journey than what sometimes meets the eye online too. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
you being so open. Now I got to ask your best advice. So what is your best advice for someone who has never competed before but wants to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
So my best advice for someone who hasn't competed, is to this is bodybuilding, so set your long-term goal of what you want to do with competing, but then set your realistic timeline of what's going to be achievable for you at different phases. And don't be afraid to take time to put on muscle. Um, Getting on stage is so much more fun with muscle. But enjoy it. Like, literally, if your goal is to just get on stage, like, have fun with it. Don't compare to someone who's been a 10-year athlete. Um, the whole purpose of you doing it, like you said from the start, was to enjoy it, to have fun. It's a choice, and embrace having fun when you do your competition. And then, advice for someone who's on their road to pro is persistence. Don't give up, because each each national show can be judged a little bit differently. Everything is subjective. So as you're going through that, um, don't let one slip in placing or one bad placing be something that determines if you're going to continue on the road, your road to pro. Like, if it's truly your goal, just keep going, set goals, take time to evaluate between things, because we do see the anomalies every time where it's like a few people turn pro very quickly. But reality is that it can take a long time. If that's what you want, you can do it if you really, really push through.
I appreciate that advice personally. So that'll be playing in the back of my mind for sure. And just everything you've shared so far. And hopefully we get to have more conversations in the future because it's just been awesome as I expected it would be. So, how can people follow your journey, connect with you, and yeah, find you?
So I'm on Instagram with at Lolo underscore IFBB Pro. So Lolo is my nickname, and so it's easy to find with that. But that's where I share most of my journey. I'm on there, and then I just started TikTok. I'm hoping that I'm not too old to learn it, but it's the
It's
same.
not easy to learn, in my opinion. I'm like, I'll just post long form videos there.
Am I old? I'm not. I don't know. But it's just gonna be the same. So Instagram's the place to follow me.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put both of those in the show notes page. You guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, the episode will be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the alphabetized category section. You can find our name there. Not only will you find all the ways to connect with us, but you're also going to see a full bulleted list of all the topics we covered. You'll see episode timestamps. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should be able to click those timestamps as well to go back to your favorite parts or share with somebody else. And then there's also a summary, like what you'd find in the back of the book. So if you want to share this with other people, you can let them know what to expect. Of course, we always appreciate when you guys tag us, let us know you listen, give us your main takeaways. And I speak on behalf of pretty much every single athlete I've interviewed. They love when you message them, letting them know what you took away from it or just that you appreciated it. So please, if you have the time to do that after listening, let us know what you thought of it. And if you guys have any athletes you want to hear on, we just had the end of a season pretty much by the time you guys hear this episode. So if there's new pros or pros that have been around for a while you want to hear, feel free to drop some suggestions to me at celestial_fit on Instagram. With all that being said, hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world. Take it off.